Dead Sea Scrolls, where Buddy says Mary should leave us. Women aren't worthy of life. And then Jesus says, and I'll teach her how to be male, or something about male, to resemble you males. What he was talking about, and what that guy was criticizing, was Jesus, his feminine element. Mary was his feminine element. Taking from the first two, like we do, who then we masculinize in the triple male. Logic, intellect, but it's intellect that leads to logic, and then understanding that, the self-calculating spirit does that, and then we are to calculate what to do with that, between masculine and feminine element. And when our intent is for the good, and we are programmed to follow through with it, then the result is good. Spiritual, connecting, trusting. The stem results from a calculated heart's thought with the wisdom of the good. The first human behavior is inside the calculation, inside thought process, and it's a behavior because there's now two feminine elements fighting for the same space in our frontal lobe that's connected to our heart, that we do our intent making. Whichever feminine element dominates the heart, dominates the frontal lobe, and intent making, the sacred feminine self-calculating spirit of life that feeds the last masculine and feminine element. And the bridegroom is that, bridegroom. Masculine and feminine elements are bridegroom, the bridegroom, spoken of in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So when the intent is for good, the result is goodness. And it's the same goodness that intent is already developed. The intent for goodness is already developed at birth, in childhood. Then we are spiritually converted into the lower self. Now we're higher and lower self after the rejection model of parenting. Don't blame parents. There's a thing you can do that doesn't blame and lets everything feel resolved later. That's real. Pain disappears. The need to hate disappears. The need to... And it's true what they say on that documentary, that emotion and behavior become addictions because of the brain chemical release. It's the same one in the psychoactive substance that alcohol and drugs are, that distort the natural flow of brain chemical release. So it's the same addiction as drugs and alcohol, emotional and behavioral. And those emotional behavioral addictions are only self-protection behaviors. We go emotional, we have an emotional response in the moment, unresolved pain connects to the past, we bring that into the now, and we go self-protect instead of self-express the natural emotional truth of the self in that experience. When the emotional response comes, when that happens, we go shut down, and the dark feminine of the lower self, that end result, the last masculine feminine element, now is killing the life off inside your emotional truth of the self. Everybody goes through this because of not only the rejection model of parenting, but environmental programming that screams rejection at all of us. And we are programmed from the outside in also. So there's no blaming the parents. They're reacting the same way you are reacting to your children now, or are about to, if you want to have children, to who dominates the intent making in the frontal lobe that's connected with the heart. If your heart is without fear, then you're with the life source. If your heart is filled with fear, or becomes filled with fear, in the moment that you know you need to self-express, in that moment with somebody else, but you become paralyzed with fear or whatever. You refuse to self-express for whatever because you're afraid of rejection. Not the dangerous part. Like, there's a dangerous part in this world if you were to tell the truth. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that you feel trust with, but still are too afraid to tell them. And it's not, the thing is with that, it's not telling them. It's the ability to self-express over self-protect. That means it's the higher self-thought process that dominates you, and not the lower self-thought process that dominates you. And it's all about the feminine element that dominates the masculine element. If dark feminine of the lower self, of fear, of self-expression, don't pay attention to any other fears. Set those aside for now, okay? They're there, yes. Set them aside and pay attention to this one thing. Fear of self-expression. There's a way now, through the meditations that I show you, to erase your pain. It'll erase a lot of it, but you still have to work to recreate brand new emotional experiences, to become that happy joy stuff that we all hear about. I cleared my pain. I know others who have cleared their pain and got their joy back. I haven't found my joy yet, but I will. But my pain's gone, man. Holy fuck. Anyway. Dude, I was looking for 25 plus years, and I couldn't find anything that reprogrammed the self-worth. Nothing worked. I found all kinds of creative ways of not bringing my angry self, my self-protection behavior. That was mine, anger. But really, I was just afraid. I was pretending to be angry. I was convincing. Anyway, I erased pain, and now I'm working towards feeling happy. Again, I'm starting also to remember how I felt before spiritual conversion. Wow. My memories of childhood were all horrible. Like, well, everybody. We always, I don't want to say always and all people, but most of us, we seem to all go back into the dark feminine of the lower self, especially in our environment. And we go self-protect in our families. We teach our children to do the same thing when we do that inside ourselves. That's what Secret Saying 114 meant. The bridegroom thing, the calculation, the interaction, the spiritual copulation between masculine and feminine elements. That's what the bridegroom is. That's spiritual copulation. Okay? Physical copulation, obviously different. The human being is amazing. You know what? When I started learning about myself, I stopped hating. I stopped hating you. I didn't know I didn't hate you. I thought I did. I was scared to get close to you and have disaster happen. So I self-protected. But my point is, I didn't hate you. I was just afraid, terribly afraid. And I learned that, and it became an ongoing program. And then I started believing, because it's an ongoing program. That's what it means by living computer. It assumes the thought as self, you see. But if self allows truth of everything to assume self and let it happen, then you become it, man. You become that God self. You become that centered. You become the will, the intent itself to become it. And while at the same time knowing how to self-protect, and it's not automatic reaction, it's picking and choosing your tools appropriate to the moment. Because let's face it, it's dangerous to tell the truth to some people. So when I love truth, now I love God. Now I know how to and why to. Their version, I refused to. I wanted to, and I did. We all do, in that secret part of our heart's thought. But for me to self-express that I love God, I couldn't. It wasn't real to me. It has to be real, or I'm not doing it. But for me to say that I love truth, and I almost love emotional response. Now, there's the thing also. You begin to like the emotional response. And when you, after the meditations and you clear your pain, you begin to start accepting again. That becomes an ongoing thing, and then it's its own program again. You reprogram like that. And then emotion is okay. And then you start liking it. And in that beginning again, you start liking yourself, because truthful emotion is the self. Emotion makes truth the self. You see? That's how, and because truth is God, it makes God the self. I'm sorry, it does. It makes self God. But with your knowledge base, not his, you see? But the thing is, we have the same rebirthing abilities as God does. They do it in thought. Their spiritual copulation, their child is the idea. The idea becomes a living God. And they're careful what they think in heaven, right? Okay. Except for the Son of God, when he made the decision, because he didn't know and he thought he was doing everything cool, he made the decision to leave his wisdom that led him to the logic, just like us. And she went off, because they're living beings, separate living beings inside us. They're separate living beings too, but we don't see them like that. They're inside self. They are self. I forgot my point. That's what we have to begin to see. Begin to view our ideas as itself the birth of a child, because, hang on, symbolically, the idea, it looks good, but then it can grow and evolve. That's the thing. Ideas grow and evolve like children do through the same idea evolving process. Their bodies grow, so do ours, but we're stunted. Let's not stunt our kids. So their spiritual knowledge is self, the knowledge base of self, the knowledge base of truth, knowledge base of emotional self. Acknowledge, you keep that, and it's positive. And when it is, that's what the child will recall from all its life, live a healthy, productive life. This isn't ideal speaking. It's not ideal thinking. It's the change of a human being. It's the change of the emotional understanding of self. When that changes, self-worth comes back. That's the thing. And then you just become naturally self again. Guess what that is? You become the natural part of what is inside the seed in which you were born with. We were born with, all of us. In creating us, not the colored people. They came from the incomplete God, the real one. Not the one assuming itself as a God. Seeing the idea as a child, and it has to learn, grow, and evolve in that process. And that's what we do. Like, our aspirations are birthed, right? The idea of birth, full of life, and we want to pursue that. But and that takes the self-expression of the innermost truth of the self, delivered with the idea that you're trying to pitch to somebody, and get them as inspired as you. We do that. We try to do that daily, and then we give up. But when the self is stopped by a fear of self-expression, then there's no pursuing the goal. The goal of the idea of birth, from masculine and feminine elements copulating with each other, coming up with the idea, birthing the idea, from the knowledge of truth and emotional response given to us from the self-calculating spirit of masculine and feminine elements of the life source. That's inspiring, buddy. It's good to feel alive. I love it. I love talking. We communicate in silence. So is that talking to God? You betcha it is. That communication is interaction with what truth is speaking of itself to you, meaning through emotional response, and it comes, the experience become, in our relationships, I'm not talking about the experience we have performing any task, that's not what I mean. I mean in our interactions with each other only, and dogs, and kittens, and animals, and what's life on the outside too. So guiding her and making her more masculine of what is the feminine element, because emotional truth without direction, and we act on that, that's just all over the place. I'm sure you've seen the movie Trainwreck. Without cognitive balance of the emotional truth of the self, we get all screwed up. And that's what I meant by masculinizing her. I mean, the feminine element in Jesus. That's who they were talking to. About Mary, him, his feminine element. Teaching in secret code, because all this information was taken, and I wonder why, because, it's a good score. Look at what they scored. The obedience of 7 billion people? That's amazing. And don't let yourself go into angry person's wisdom, because that's the infection. The cure is the wisdom of the good. The cure, then, is developing the intent for wisdom of the good. The cure, then, because we can't do that, is removing the pain from your heart. The cure, then, is doing your meditations to see if it works for you. You know what? It works. If it works for me, man. Look, I had thick filters. Got some left I'm working on. And they disappeared. They disappeared. All of a sudden, one day, I noticed they were gone, and I wasn't reacting anymore. I was examining my emotions. I'm trying to figure out what it meant, instead of being so damn angry, because that's what happened. I went immediate anger to deal with how I was feeling and the stress levels that were created from not knowing how to deal with that stuff. Forgot my point. Yeah, got my point. So, build a school so I can train trainers. I need help with that. We need trainers to train people how to be in alignment, in spiritual alignment, because that's what we do. That's what we show you how to do and maintain it. The thing is, maintaining it, half the battle's gone, because you become natural again. That's amazing. I can't get over how amazing that is. This isn't new information. It's rediscovered original information. It's the information that it's the original Bible, and what they did with it was change it and manipulate it and took thin slivers of truth and filled in the rest with their intent to deceive you. Their intent was to distort the information using their dark feminine lower selves. And this was 100,000 years ago, or however long, who knows. But the information has been kept from us. But Jesus was smart. He knew Buddy was coming. He was said to have, the interpreter doesn't want to be named, and the other people in the study group don't want to be named. They're afraid to be exposed because they watch too much TV. I mean, they have specific reasons for why they're afraid. Anyway, so when the time comes and somebody wants to ask me about them, don't, because I'm not going to say nothing. developing the school. I need help. Can't do this by myself. And if you can donate, go ahead. But if you need stuff, buy stuff, and we'll use the commission. It'll go to building a school to help idiot motherfuckers like me who didn't know any better. And went complete self-destruct. And when a person goes like that, I mean, I'm not talking about the junkie days, because that's where I resulted. That's the result of my early childhood programming. I'm talking about before that, when I extracted from my environment the means of what I saw as the need of survival. That meant stealing from you. And I cost you a lot of money. You know what? There's a million guys like me. Million. And they're better than me, and they take more money from you. What was my point to that? But you know what? 98% of people who are in survival mode like that don't want to be, and they want to make changes. But nobody knows how. We know how. The thing is, most people can just take the direction from the book. Most people will take the direction from the skills section in the meditations direction and be good and cool. Others need more help than that, though.